What's up, everybody? My name is Estix, and with the release of Edge of Eternities, there have been a lot of really good spoiled cards. However, there's one that I'm extra excited for, and that's Genesis Shepard. Genesis Shepard reads, with you may play lands from your graveyard, and whenever you sacrifice another non-token permanent, which is actually really important, non-token, during your turn, put a number of 1/1 counters equal to his power onto one other target creature. So that's really important too, because that means that you won't be able to stack this ability on top of him. So really, a lot of the cards are going to focus on making him stronger and focus around that sacrificing ability. Now let's start off with the sac creatures. These are going to take advantage of blocking creatures and sacrificing themselves, as well as returning themselves back to your hand. Starting off with Endless Cockroaches, which Endless Cockroaches is a creature insect that says whenever Endless Cockroaches dies, return it to owner's hand. That means whenever you're sacrificing a creature, you can bring it back to your hand and recast it for 3 mana. Next, we have Army Ants. And Army Ants actually is super important because it says tap, sack land, destroy target land. So really with this deck, it's really strange because destroying lands is something that you usually don't want to do in Commander. But with this Commander, you can play lands from your graveyard, so sacking lands should not be a problem for you. And that gives you 2 bonus counters. So whenever you sack a land to activate the ability, you can also destroy target land. And that's actually important for some of the lands that we have coming up later, because that'll be able to activate by only sacrificing a land and not having to destroy someone else's land. You don't want to destroy someone else's land. That's kind of the fear of this deck, is this is going to be a land destruction deck for other people. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be a land destructor. Trust me, destroy your own shit. Alongside this, we have Sandworm, which has haste, and whenever this creature enters destroy target land, and its controller may search its library for a basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So with this ability, you're actually going to take advantage of some of the lands that we have coming up that say indestructible, just like the other card would. So whenever it says indestructible and it says destroy target land, you'll actually focus that land. Really want to take advantage of these cards. Destroying your own stuff is, again, not ideal, but in this deck is actually really good. So it's taking something that's usually useless and terrible and turning it into something that's pretty solid. So if I screw this up, correct me in the comments. Transmogrant Altar is a 3 mana artifact that says sack a creature, add 3 mana, which is colorless, which is kind of not ideal, but it's actually not too terrible. And then you have sack a creature and create a 3/3 colorless zombie artifact creature token, activate only as a sorcery. So if you wanted to sack something to get a death trigger off of and then still keep a body on the battlefield, that's a good option. If you need a little extra mana, the other option is good. So this is going to be really good and synergize well with this commander. And last but not least, we have Nahiri's Lithoforming. And Nahiri's Lithoforming is actually really good in this deck. Not too good in other decks, but it's sacrifice X lands, and then you may play X lands, which means that because your commander can play cards from the graveyard, you're able to recast the lands that you might have just shoved in there, or cards that you've been sacking this whole time with like Sandworm and such. And that actually leads me to the next section, which is actually the most important lands of the deck. Starting off with Blast Zone. Now Blast Zone is a really good, really cheap land that I think should be utilized more often. Blast Zone reads, Blast Zone enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it. Tap, add 1 colorless mana. XX tap, put a X charge counters on Blast Zone, and then sacrifice Blast Zone each non-land permanent mana value equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone. So that will actually trigger a ton of sacrifice triggers for you for this specific commander. And you could just absolutely charge up Blast Zone, especially with stuff like your Altar and Nahiri's Lithoforming. You're really going to want to charge this up as much as possible and recycle this with your commanders. So using this over and over and replaying it, charging it up, and replaying it again the next turn is going to be ideal for this deck. Next, these are just some of the lands like Evolving Wilds, Ghost Quarters, and Riveter's Overlook, which sacrifice themselves to bring out more stuff out of your library, such as other lands or just basics. So this is good just because you can replay them from your graveyard next turn, giving you multiple land drop triggers, and landfall is going to be really good with this. Next, we have a utility land, Memorial to Folly. This land enters tap. Tap, add a black mana. And then black and 2 colorless, tap, sacrifice this land, return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. So, you know, this is just a 3 sack and return a target creature. So you sack this, return a target creature that maybe couldn't return itself to the battlefield, and then you can play this the next turn to return another one. So basically this is being able to help you recast stuff, and it's sacrificing itself, triggering your commander. So this is really good for this deck. This is actually really good for things like the indestructible that I was mentioning earlier, and that's Dark Moss Bridge. And this is actually just one of the cheaper options for this deck. but Dark Moss Bridge has indestructible. So whenever you're targeting a land for a destroy target land ability, you can target these and they won't be destroyed and they will stick around and you still get the trigger off of it. So this is actually a really good, really smart way to play this deck. Last but not least on this is actually a creature that's going to really get a lot of value off of dropping these in your graveyard and recasting them as your commander, which is Avenger of Zendikar, which whenever this creature enters, create a 0/1 green plant token for each land you control. So while you're returning this creature back to your hand with like something like Memorial to Folly, you can recast this and get more 0/1 plant tokens. However, with landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a 1/1 counter on each plant you control. So this is really good because since you are going to be ramping, a lot of ramping with land, you're going to go ahead and put a ton of little blockers and recast this guy. So you're going to be able to get a huge army just by sacking him, bringing him back, and then recasting a land card from your graveyard. So that's really good, and it gives you a reason to keep your creature as fodder and to still use him as an attacker. Now, let's get into the extra sauce that we have here. This is the stuff that's going to take advantage of your 1/1 counters, and some of the other stuff that's just going to be really good for this deck, so let's hop into it. Starting off with Genova. At the beginning of your combat each turn, put an X/1/1 counter equal to Genova's power up to one target creature. So that's going to be good for your commander's ability for this deck, and that is also going to be good for a couple of other creatures like the one I have next. That creature becomes a mutant in addition to its other types, which is going to be good if you have just like mutant cast spells. And whenever a mutant you control dies during your turn, draw cards equal to its power. So while you're putting 1/1 counters on each creature with this card, you're also going to be gaining power with it. So whenever a mutant you control dies, you get to draw cards equal to its power. So while you're ramping with this card, you're also going to be drawing cards. So this is going to be good because you're going to be sacrificing all your stuff and getting losing a lot of gas. Next, we have a synergy for this card, Iridescent Horns Beetle. So whenever Iridescent Horns Beetle at the end of your combat, you get to create X/1/1 insect creature tokens equal to the amount of +1/+1 counters that you had put on a creature this turn. So that's actually really good because you're going to be doing that a lot with your commander and stuff like Genova and other creatures. Next, we have one with the Kami. So whenever a modified creature you control dies, you get to put X/1/1 count. You get to put X/1/1 spirit tokens onto the battlefield equal to the amount of its power. So this is really good for this deck because everything is going to be growing with counters. And since those do count as modifications, you get to sacrifice a creature and get whatever for its power, and then you also get to pop off this on top of it. So it's just extra fodder for your deck. And some insects that I don't see played a lot is Tunneling Genopede and Plated Genopede, and they both have landfall. Tunneling Genopede is probably going to be better for this deck because it's burning an opponent with landfall. So you're going to get like 4 or 5 even drops a turn, so why not hit your opponent directly on top of already swinging in and hitting him. And last but not least, we have Forgotten Ancient. Forgotten Ancient reads, whenever a player casts a spell, you may put 1/1 counters on Forgotten Ancient. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of 1/1 counters from Forgotten Ancient onto another creature. So that's going to be absolutely broken for your commander because if you can stockpile him, you can basically just stockpile your whole board as you sacrifice those lands. So really broken, really good. Now it's time to get into the best part of this deck. The bonus cards are for those who have a little more dough or who are a little more excited about the commander and want to basically dump a bunch of money into him. Let's be for real. Starting off with number 1, Phyrexia, All Will Be One. Now, All Will Be One is a busted enchantment that reads, whenever you put 1/1 counters on a permanent you control, All Will Be One will do damage to a target opponent, creature, or a planeswalker that opponent controls. So while you're stockpiling these freaking +1/+1 counters, you can absolutely just smack your opponent, smack a creature, or smack a planeswalker. Screw those stupid planeswalkers. I freaking hate them. Next, I have something else that could smack the shit out of a planeswalker. Imazu, Swarm's Hunger, which is a legendary creature insect shaman with flying and menace. And other insects you control have menace. And whenever a card leaves your graveyard, you may create a 1/1 black and green insect token with a 1/1 counters equal to the greatest mana value amongst those cards. If you do this only once per turn. So if you're getting out like a 5 mana creature from your graveyard and you're putting it back in your hand, that's going to absolutely give you a ton of counters and it's going to give you a big old body. And even though this is only once per turn, this is a really good card for really just stockpiling everything. It synergizes well. I recommend it. last but not least, one of the best cards for this deck and for any landfall deck, let's just be fucking for real, the Gitrog monster, which is Death Touch, and at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Gitrog monster unless you sacrifice a land, and then you may play an additional land during each one of your turns. That's awesome. And then whenever one or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, you draw a card. So you're going to be popping this guy off 100 times per turn. He's going to be absolutely letting you ramp and letting you play extra cards each part of your turn. On top of that, if someone swings in, he's a 6/6, he has Death Touch, he's only 5 mana, and you get to get an extra sacrifice. So, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope Edge of Eternities looks good to you guys. It looks good to me. And for more builds and insect builds, I have some on this side. And if you are getting sick of builds, check out my videos over here. Thank you so much for watching. Happy casting.